Nearly no living person has ever seen a city located atop a mountain in Peru. You won't be allowed entry by the government that owns it. A multi-day walk through one of the world's wettest, densest cloud forests requires a permit from 2 different ministries. The last time large groups of outsiders attempted to approach this place, the ruins started to clearly disintegrate. Perched at 2,850 meters above sea level, it is constantly covered in clouds. The first outsider to see the 26 circular stone houses on a hilltop spent the rest of his life telling the world that he had found them because they were so precisely and oddly decorated. Then, in 2025, the number of known structures suddenly increased from 26 to over 130 as laser light penetrated the canopy above it. We enter the most inaccessible archaeological site in the Americas tonight and pose the question that is now unavoidable due to the laser. How much of Grand Pageant have we seen so far, and how much is still hidden? There is a tidy, heroic, and nearly completely incorrect version of the discovery narrative. After battling through weeks of jungle in the cloud woods of northern Peru in 1965, American explorer Jean Savoy arrived at the base of a hilltop covered in circular stone structures. He sent the news to the international press via cable. He was referred to as the discoverer in the headlines. Grand Pageant, the Great Pageant, was the name he gave the location, and for many years that version of events was the official narrative. This is the version that is supported by the record. 2 years prior to Savoy's arrival in 1963, Carlos Tomás Torreal Vajuarez, the mayor of the Patas region, accompanied a party of local peasants to the mountain and recorded their findings. Eduardo Pina Meza, a local native, may have visited the location as early as 1929 while inspecting land for a road project, according to evidence. The world press was not cabled by either man. There was no publisher waiting for either man. The world therefore believed Savoy when he arrived at the remains in 1965 with the guidance of the same Patas locals and announced the news in his name. This doesn't matter because it turns Savoy into a villain. He was a brave and genuinely energetic explorer. However, it reveals something about the type of location Grand Pageant has always been. A website that is repeatedly discovered and then forgotten. A city that its closest neighbors have always heard of. And so until someone with a press connection shows up to identify it, the outside world has a tendency to ignore it. The world started destroying what it had discovered as soon as it paid attention. By 1966, 1 year following Savoy's visit, the Peruvian government had dispatched a military mission. Trees were cut down. The forest was cleared to make way for a helicopter landing pad. The ring of greenery that had sheltered the city's stone and retained moisture for generations was removed. And the ruins started to disintegrate when they were exposed to the sun and rain for the first time in recorded history. In the open air, slate mosaics that had survived since before the Incas disintegrated. Within years of being discovered, stone reliefs that had survived 5 centuries of cloud and mist began to crumble. Warren Church, an archaeologist who worked at the site for many years, wrote a report about this procedure. He gave it a title that has grown to be one of Andean scholarship's more subtly deadly statements, adoring it unconditionally. Grand Pageant was shut down. Permits were necessary. Over what was left, the forest was allowed to regrow. With the exception of a few scholars, the city has been hidden behind its ring of clouds for the majority of the decades afterward, slowly collapsing in the shadows. That is the actual account of Grand Pageant's discovery. It was not a triumphant moment in the woods. Rather, it was a gradual process of discovery, harm, and resolution that continues to this day. This raises the question that, prior to tree cutting in 1966, no one had considered. What precisely did we discover? For a little time, forget you are in the jungle as you stand at the base of Building 1. Take a look at the stone before you. The structure is round. Every major building at Grand Pageant is round and has a diameter of 13 meters. It rises in 2 layers, separated from the upper chamber above by a purposeful horizontal strip called a cornice. The entrance is reached via flat slate stairs. Additionally, human figures in high relief are positioned in panels on either side of the entrance, raised from the surface, not painted on or scratched into it. In Andean ceremonial art, the figures are frequently depicted standing proud of the stone with their knees turned outward and their arms bent at the elbow. A showy, authoritative, and inviting stance. Human figures monitoring everyone who enters like they have observed everyone who has entered for 600 years. A belt of geometric ornamentation encircles the building's upper portion. Stepped motifs, Angular repetitive forms and diamond shapes are all constructed from fitting slate pieces put together like a mosaic rather than from carved solid stone. In order for the pattern to arise from the relationship between the parts rather than from a single carved surface, each piece is chosen based on its shape and placed against its neighbors. This work is not rudimentary. This is not what a people produce when they are just starting out in their craft. This is a sophisticated ornamental style that demands both a design vocabulary and the ability to execute it on a curving surface using tiny, error-prone stone pieces. The outside decor of the round buildings at Cuelap, the famous Chachapoya Citadel in the Utcubamba Valley, 300 kilometers to the northwest, makes the connection impossible to ignore. The same diamond friezes, the same stepping motifs, the same position of the human figures, a coherent decorative language spoken consistently throughout sites that are separated by days of mountain journey. The popular interpretation of this is simple and most likely accurate. The Chachapoya were a culturally unified people organized into regional chiefdoms, but sharing a same artistic legacy, and Grand Pajatane and Cuelap are essentially two representations of the same cultural lineage, the same hand stretched across a mountain range. But such reading, taken seriously, requires you to confront an issue that textbooks leave respectfully unresolved. What kind of society creates a complex, continuous decorative heritage that spans the entire continent between settlements that are separated by such challenging terrain that it now takes a week to get between them? And what kind of culture creates the most elaborate known manifestation of that tradition? A ceremonial city covered in mosaics, situated in the most remote place possible. Grand Pajatane is not accidentally constructed here. You chose this peak at this altitude in this particular fold of cloud forest with intentional thought. The Monte Cristo River Valley can be seen in all directions from the summit. You can see 50 km when the weather is clear. Someone desired to be up here, and for whatever transpired there to be extremely difficult to access. The official story undervalues the Chachapoya, thus we should be clear about who they were. The term cloud forest people or cloud warriors is found in textbooks. These are not inaccurate exactly, but they convey a type of beautiful simplicity, a mountain people alone building in stone fighting the Inca. That is not nearly as striking or odd as the reality. The Chachapoya inhabited a sizable portion of the northeastern Andes, creating an intricate web of communities, ceremonial sites, and agricultural systems in a region that still presents difficulties for contemporary travelers. They buried their dead in locations that cause everyone to pause and take stock. One of the most photographed funerary sites in Chachapoya, the sarcophagi of Corregia are located 200 meters above the valley level on a ledge of bare rock. Each of these human-shaped clay figurines may reach a height of 2.5 meters. Each contained a seated person that was gazing out over the valley below. Without contemporary climbing gear, it is physically impossible to reach the ledge they occupy. It's unclear exactly how the Chachapoya placed them there. Near Grand Pajatane itself, at Los Pinchudos, a row of brightly colored wooden figures protrudes from a cliff face inside a rock crevice, observing the forest below. The roofs of the buildings are made of wood. For generations, the painted clay has endured outdoors. When you deal with the Chachapoya, you are dealing with a civilization that continuously selected the most challenging, dizzying, and inaccessible locations for its ceremonial centers, burial sites, great fortresses, and mosaic-covered cities, and then constructed them with a precision and beauty that was not strictly necessary for any purely practical purpose. They weren't constructing for practicality. They were constructing for a different purpose, meaning, visibility, and closeness to something they discovered in the heights. The Inca took a very lengthy time to assimilate the Chachapoya, despite their great competence in absorbing most of South America. They made several attempts. They encountered constant opposition. They eventually succeeded, but only by force, only partially, and only in the late 15th century, few decades before the Spanish came and the Chachapoya were exposed to European disease. The ceremonial center of that people's world was Grand Pajatane, and we believed we had a decent idea of its size until very recently. By a factor of 5, we were mistaken. A group from the World Monuments Fund arrived above the cloud forest in 2022 with a set of tools that didn't require any tree chopping. Airborne LiDAR, terrestrial laser scanning, photogrammetry, the assembling of tens of thousands of overlapping pictures into a three-dimensional model of a surface accurate to the millimeter. Layer by layer, the woodland above Grand Pajatane was mapped. After the canopy was digitally removed, the ridge beneath it, which everyone had thought to be mostly studied and understood, turned out to be something quite different. 26 buildings. Everyone was familiar with the number. The figure that had been recorded since the polls conducted in 1980. Grand Pageant's imagined scale was derived from this number. Over 130 were discovered by the laser. Give that some time to sit. Researchers had been examining fewer than 25% of what was truly present for 60 years. In addition to houses, the new structures provide signs of a vast pre-Hispanic route network. Grand Pageant was connected to other known Chachapoya sites in the area by roads. Down the valley to Los Pinchudos, Papayas, and La Playa. Not a far-off outpost, not a remote ceremonial site on an abandoned hill. A node, a center, a city at the heart of something much bigger than anyone had been willing to admit. The World Monuments Fund came to the conclusion that Grand Pageant was a part of a wider network of communities spanning several eras rather than an isolated ceremonial center. The same investigation confirmed occupation dating back centuries before the apparent construction, demonstrating this ridge was used and reused across generations. The entire city was not what we were observing. We might not have seen the whole thing yet. Return to the building and the 5 figures observing the entrance. The frieze has a detail that most accounts easily get over. The human figures are not generic, but they are stylized with their knees outward and arms flexed. They've got faces. Each face is distinct. Additionally, birds are included into the upper tier's geometric band above the door. Between the diamond patterns in the mosaic are large birds with their wings outstretched, condors. The condor can be found at several locations in Chachapoya ornamental art. On the cliff tombs, it can be seen. Textile fragments retrieved from burial contexts contain it. The condor serves as a messenger between the human world and the world above it in Andean cosmology, spanning from the northern highlands to the Altiplano. No human body can match the freedom of the big bird that transports the dead aloft and travels between the earth and the sky. The Chachapoya were very serious about that connection, as evidenced by their buildings. They buried their dead in locations only birds could reach, built their ceremonial centers on the highest ridges they could find, and positioned their mosaic-clad city in permanent cloud at an elevation where condors actually fly. The Inca civilization, which is renowned for assimilating other peoples, changing their customs, and incorporating them into the empire, then came. They accomplished something really distinctive at Grand Pageant. They constructed on top of it. Grand Pageant's visible remains are from the Inca era in terms of architecture. The buildings that survived, the circular platforms, the mosaic friezes, and the fitted slate stairways, were raised or significantly rebuilt during the Inca occupation of the site, indicating that the Inca did not demolish what they found when they arrived. However, the ceramic evidence and radiocarbon dates indicate that people were here long before. They included it. They maintained the mosaic tradition while erecting their own buildings on the Chachapoya foundations. What did they observe that led them to choose preservation over demolition? What made the most powerful empire in the pre-Columbian Americas respect these circular structures, these condor friezes, and this specific ridge above the Monte Cristo River? To be honest, we don't know. Furthermore, the 2025 laser survey, which verified over 100 structures we had never cataloged, suggests that part of the solution may still be hidden beneath the forest, unmapped, and awaiting the appropriate inquiry. Since the evidence in this case necessitates honesty, let's be open about our positions. Grand Pageant's popular narrative is accurate. This is where the Chachapoya erected. The site was expanded and reconstructed by the Incas. A narrative of occupation spanning from at least 200 BCE to the late 15th century is generally supported by the ceramic sequence, radiocarbon dates, and architectural research. That sequence is not overthrown by anything we have discussed tonight. It complicates the scale, which is important in this situation. There are more than 130 structures at a location that we believed had 26. Once thought to be an isolated ceremonial outpost, this location is now the core of a road network that links important Chachapoya sites throughout the area. Until 2025, our understanding of a location that has been formally examined since the 1960s was less than 25% of its true complexity. There are questions here that no one has yet answered. The buildings were mapped but not opened in the 2022-2024 study. Modern eyes have yet to see what lies within more than 100 circular stone dwellings on a Peruvian mountaintop that have been hidden by the jungle since the 16th century. What is connected by the road network that we haven't yet discovered? And what lies beneath the website? Beneath the Inca-era construction are earth layers with ceramic evidence dating back to 200 BC. More than 2,000 years before the structures we see today were erected, something was on this ridge producing pottery. Nobody has dug far enough to determine what that was with certainty. These are not peripheral inquiries. These are the inquiries raised by the laser itself. In 2025, peer-reviewed, meticulously recorded mainstream study produced these uncertainties. Because mysteries have been placed onto the site by theorists, it is not mysterious. It is mysterious because the more attentively you look at it, the more it exposes that it has not yet been fully looked at. Really, who were these people? Not the cloud warriors, not the local chiefdom, not the people that the Spanish destroyed and the Incas assimilated. Before anyone came to give them names, who were they in their own eyes?